Okay. Hello. Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. Okay. I think. Hi. Hi, Kamil. Can you hear me? Can.
Oh yeah, I'll
Yeah.
sing it.
Okay. 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 Cool. Hello. I think it's amazing that you have two cameras in front of you. Like, you're not really using your laptop camera because it's like I can see your whole studio behind you as well.
Yeah, it's a perk of being a photographer and in the business. I don't.
Right. Yeah, especially in the pandemic, I think you need this kind of thing with your clients as well. I think that's really great. Anyway, we're preparing. We haven't put the students on Zoom because we want to make sure if you need anything else, or is there any questions before we start or anything?
The only question I have is, I would probably want a chat on to be able to at least for them to type.
Okay, yeah. I think we will let them, use the chat so that when you explain, they can also put questions and everything that you can address after or in between, Okay, so how it will go, it's actually, I will introduce you to the students, and we have Miss Ade. So she's the head of our photography lab back at the university. So she will give some speech as well for the students. And then after that, it's all yours. You can start your material and everything.
Okay, great.
Great. Can you believe it's been like 10 years?
10 years.
Yeah, since the last time we met. I think it was like 2012 when I was in Moscow, right?
Yeah, I was thinking about it just yesterday, and it's crazy.
Oh, I was like 18. Did you remember? Like I was like a teenager wandering around Moscow.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. But I agree. It felt like it was just yesterday. Anyway, we're going to start put the students in, and you know, we have one person in this room. It's Miss Tika. So she's also one of the lecturer for photography subject. I'm not sure if she's going to show herself, but she's here. And I'm going to switch language, you know, between Indonesian and English. So I hope it's okay, you know, when you don't understand what I'm saying when I'm talking to the students in my language.
Sure, totally. And I was going through the responses in the table, and a few people were
not really, you know, able to
yeah. So if at some point you feel like I'm not being understood,
okay.
would you make a sign to me? And
okay, so I saw the response from the students this morning, and most of them actually speak and understand English very well, and most of them, I think they just not really confident on using their English. That's why they put our native language to fill up your survey. But basically, what they put in there, more or less the same with the students, which they wrote in English. So it's all good with what they're expecting, you know, because when I see through the let me sorry. Okay, let me share it to you as well so that I can. Okay, let's see. Okay, so here, this one, like, this one basically says that she likes nature, you know, like a photograph of nature, and the poem that would, you know, explain is about the freshness of nature and stuff. And what question she actually have for you is like, what is the tips and tricks for, you know, satisfying photograph? So basically, it's also the same with what they write with the English question. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
more or less the same. You know what they ask. So you can just go through the English question, and I think automatically you also answering those questions standing not in English. So
okay.
so it's good. It's all good, you know.
But still, if at any point you feel like people start to maybe ask questions in the chat, and I'm not seeing that, just feel free to stop me, and I will just explain it in more detail, and maybe, I don't know, in different words, just to.
Okay, yeah. Sure.
Because it's not an easy topic at all. Okay. And it's hard to speak about composition in simple, plain words, because it's not something you can hold in your hand and figure it out. It's pretty complex. So I have to make some metaphors and maybe build up on something else, and just keep me in check, and feel free, just stop me and ask me to explain it again.
Sure. Yeah. Can you I need to have a picture for documentation as well, so this in between we're going to take a picture. If you see like there is a voice of like there's like a voice of someone taking picture, I hope that's okay. And this class is also recorded for the university purposes. Okay, so I'm just asking for your
Sure.
consent, I guess. Okay, so Miss Tika, Mbak Tika. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna make a quick call.
I'll close the windows.
Okay.
Halo. Oke. Yuk.
Halo Mbak Ade.
Halo Mbak Tiff.
Oke, Mbak Ade, tadi saya sudah jelaskan ke Kamil ya, kayak nanti seperti apa. Saya juga cerita tentang Mbak Ade siapa. Nanti Mbak Ade kasih speech di awal sebelum dia mulai masuk ke kelasnya. Gitu sih Mbak Ade.
Oke. Sementara aku off-cam dulu ya Mbak ya, karena aku
aku mau kenalkan Mbak Ade dulu ya ke yang bersangkutan.
Oke, boleh deh.
Okay, so Kamil, this is Miss Ade. So she's
Hello, nice to meet you.
Okay.
Halo Mr. Kamil, nice to meet you.
So she's the head lab of our photography lab, the one I mentioned to you earlier. Okay, so Mbak Tika bisa tolong mahasiswanya dimasukkan ke Zoom ya?
Hai.
Okay. Sudah semua Mbak Tika?
Masih proses.
Bu Tika? Oke. Oke, selamat sore teman-teman. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Teman-teman yang sudah datang bisa videonya dinyalakan ya. Oke, teman-teman silakan videonya dinyalakan ya.
Halo teman-teman semua, bisa minta tolong untuk menyalakan videonya. Bentar lagi kita akan mulai kelasnya, guys. Sekali lagi, teman-teman, mohon videonya untuk segera dinyalakan ya.
Selamat sore, Bu Yuli. Assalamualaikum, Bu. Teman-teman, saya persilahkan Bu Yuli ya, Kepala Jurusan Ilmu Komunikasi UPN Jatim sudah hadir hari ini juga untuk melihat kelasnya teman-teman. Jadi saya harap teman-teman juga ikut semangat ya, karena Kepala Jurusan Ilmu Komunikasi UPN saja ikut hadir ini hari ini. Jadi teman-teman juga semangat.
Mulai jam berapa, Mbak?
Ini sedang menunggu mahasiswanya datang lebih banyak, Bu Yuli.
Oke. Ya.
Bu Tika mungkin sebagai dosen mata kuliah fotografi, mau dimulai kapan, Bu Tika?
Mungkin sekitar 2 menit lagi kali ya. Ini masih banyak yang baru masuk, Mbak.
Oke.
Setelah itu bisa langsung dimulai. Mungkin sambutan dari Bu Juli atau Mbak Ade atau Saya serahkan ke Mbak Oktif saja.
Oke, baik Bu Tika. Oke, sambil kita ini ya persiapan menunggu yang lain. Kelas hari ini merupakan kelas yang spesial ya teman-teman ya, karena teman-teman kelas fotografi terpilih sebagai salah satu mata kuliah untuk program Kampus Merdeka, Bu Ade ya. Mungkin nanti saya mohon dibantu koreksi Bu Ade ya. Jadi kita memiliki program virtual public lecture yang memang khusus mengundang praktisi dan juga akademisi dari universitas dan negara di luar negeri, teman-teman ya. Dan hari ini kita kehadiran ya salah satu teman lama saya ketika 10 tahun lalu saya menulis untuk artikel di Majalah National Geographic Traveler. Dan Bapak Kamil ini sudah menjadi fotografer profesional selama lebih dari 10 tahun, teman-teman. Jadi sangat banyak sekali ini pengalamannya. Teman-teman bisa lihat di sini, di belakangnya pun sudah sangat prepare ya, mau menunjukkan studionya kepada teman-teman. Jadi ini tidak hanya tentang ilmu, teman-teman ya, tentu saja ilmu yang dibagikan akan banyak, tapi juga membiasakan kita ya untuk berani berinteraksi dengan siapapun, bahkan yang tidak dari Indonesia pun kita juga harus tetap percaya diri, teman-teman ya. Kira-kira seperti itu dari saya. Monggo untuk Bu Ade dan Bu Yuli dipersilahkan untuk memberikan sambutan dan semangat untuk teman-teman mahasiswa.
Bu Ade aja ya, Mbak Oki.
Ya.
Baik Bu Yuli.
Baik, mohon izin Bu Yuli. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mrs. Yuli Chandrasari, Head of Communication Science Department. Good afternoon, Mr. Kamil Guliev. Good afternoon, Mrs. Oktifani, Mrs. Agustin, Mr. Latif, and also all participants, students of Communication Science. Hopefully we are in good health. I apologize. Now I'm wearing a mask because I'm in public place now. First, I represent the Communication Science Department. Would like to say thank you so much to Mr. Kamil Guliev for being so willing to fulfill our invitation to be a guest lecturer in the photography class.
Thank you for hearing me.
Jabro Pazalovatnas class. Is this correct?
It is.
Okay, and also thank you for Mrs. Oktifani, a PIC of Virtual Public Lecture and the Lecture of Photography course, Mr. Latif and Mrs. Agustin, who organized this class today. Okay, Mrs. Guliev, this photography is an elective course in the broadcast and journalism concentration. This course is designed for students to learn about the basic concept of photography, and then advertising photography, and also journalism photography. And photography is practicum course. So the students should practice and produce a photo product or journalism photo. Actually, we have a photography laboratory, like a small studio that can be used by students to practice on campus. But now we know this is a pandemic condition. The student did not become on campus since March 2020. But now we are so happy to get a professional photographer in our class today. We hope that the student will learn and gain a lot of experience from practitioner who is expert in their field. And like Ms. Oktifani said before, that the virtual public lecture is one of the events of the campus Merdeka program competition. It is funding from the Indonesian Ministry of Education, Culture, Research, and Technology to improve our student, to improve student quality, to contribute to global competitive, especially in creative industry. And once again, Thank you so much, Mr. Kamil Guliev and Miss Oktifani, Mr. Latif, and Miss Agustin, and of course our beloved student. Enjoy the class, everyone. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Miss Ade. Okay, so this class will be conducted full in English. And for those who are not confident with the English or maybe not fully understand, feel free to ask the question in Bahasa on the chat, or you can also type in English on the chat, and then Mr. Kamil Guliev will answer your question in between of the explanation. Saya translate ke bahasa Indonesia ya teman-teman ya. Jadi untuk teman-teman nanti kelas ini akan dijelaskan full di dalam bahasa Inggris. Teman-teman silahkan untuk mengetik pertanyaan di kolom chat ya. Kalau ada pertanyaan, dan kemarin beberapa ada yang sudah mengisi form Google ya. Itu kan ada pertanyaan yang teman-teman masukkan akan dibahas juga hari ini, akan dijawab. Dan untuk teman-teman yang merasa tidak pede dengan bahasa Inggrisnya atau mungkin tidak tahu bagaimana menanyakan pertanyaan di bahasa Inggris, silahkan ditulis di bahasa Indonesia, tidak apa-apa, di kolom chat, nanti saya akan bantu translate-kan, teman-teman ya. Ada pertanyaan mungkin dari teman-teman mahasiswa sebelum kita mulai? Is there any questions from you guys before we fully hand the time and space for Kamil for today? Okay, so everyone's ready? Yeah? Okay, all good? Okay, cool. Okay, so Kamil, you may start and say hello to the students.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me. I have a couple of news for you guys. Starting out in photography, I've been in the business for quite some time, and the good news is a lot of what you learn here, taking photography class, you can adapt to do many of things like graphic design, shooting video, all kind of stuff. The not so good news is photography is in a steady decline in terms of what clients pay you, in terms of what kind of jobs you get. This is mostly, sorry?
Info.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, I think it's just a noise. Okay.
So yeah, the video is taking over, and you have to be prepared for this. It's just not viable to start in 2021, start learning photography and hope to for it to be your profession for your whole life. If you're starting out, you have to keep in mind that at some point you will progress to video. Again, the good news is what you learn doing photography, you will very easily apply to video as well. So this is just a disclaimer because I just feel responsible for teaching you photography in 2021 because you have to know the state of business now. And now to the main thing. So we are going to talk about composition in photography today, and this is not an easy topic. So you know what, I also have the introduction part of this. I can tell you about how I've been doing business for the past 8 years and all about my clients and stuff, but it's just, I personally think there is no use, no good for you in listening about my clients and my achievements. Just you can trust me that I've been around for quite some time. I'm doing photography full time for the whole 8 years, I've never had any supporting jobs. This is my full-time job. This is what I do, and I know a thing or two about photography. And if you want later, you can check out my Facebook or my website and just find out what kind of photography I'm doing. But mostly I do product photography. Mostly I do food photography, and I work for the leading Russian food magazine, which is, by the way, has gone from print to web completely, and a lot of other magazines are doing this. The print is dying also, and if this shift from print to web, the salaries were cut accordingly, because print photography has always been more expensive to do. It's harder, technically harder, to produce a huge print, a billboard, than it is to produce something for the web. Yeah, it's obvious. Anyways, so composition. So in order to talk about composition, first, I will have to explain what composition is not. And you can see here that this is an image of an orange. This is an image of an elephant, of a mineral. This is just the ID picture. All those are the content of the photo. So if you hear someone saying that this is a picture of a person on a white background, this is not about the composition, it's about the content. And it's important to understand the distinction. Here's another picture, it's different, it's more aesthetically pleasing. And again, if you say that this is a picture of an orange, you're not talking about the composition, you're talking about the content. Again, slightly better or much better picture of an elephant, but still nothing about the composition. Here you see a picture of people mining minerals in Africa and some horrible conditions, and you start to add context to the content of this photograph. But again, it has nothing to do with the composition. So what you see, the object depicted on the photograph, is not the composition. The meaning behind the photograph, what photographer is trying to tell you with this picture, like here, it is not the composition. The composition speaks in a very unique language. It's a language of a flat image. To understand what kind of language that is, think about the language we all speak, like your mother tongue. You've learned it as a child, and probably you've never thought about it again. If you're not a poet, if you're not an author, if you don't write books, you don't give much thought to your ability to speak. We take it for granted because it is just so natural for people to be able to speak. We expect anyone to be able to speak. And photography is very much alike. Photography is at some point very easy. Anyone can pick up a phone or a camera, press a button, and you get the picture.
Hi.
And the second problem is this picture is very lifelike. It looks almost exactly like real life. So it's easy to think that what photo camera is doing is just taking a freeze still frame from reality. A lot of people don't think about the process, how the picture comes to be. because it's just so, it seems very, very easy and natural. But here is the problem with the composition. We overlook it, just as we overlook how we learned to speak our language. We overlook how exactly composition of the photo speaks to us. We just take it for granted and never think about it. That's why it's so hard to explain. I cannot show you something and tell you this is the composition. Just look at this. This is how it should be. No, it's not like that. I have to speak about principles which define why one picture speaks to us more louder than the other, because the language of the composition is how the flat image speaks to us. And you might be asking, if it is so natural, if we don't even recognize the existence of this composition, if we're just born with the feeling for the composition, like we are born and learn to speak a language naturally, why do we have to study it, and why is it important? And here, I'll tell you why. It's because the louder your picture speaks, the more attention it will grab from the viewer. And what we do here in the business, we try to grab as much attention from people as possible, because everything now is in the feed. You scroll through the Instagram, it's just pictures, 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 and you spend less than a second on each individual picture. You don't stop at them. If they don't grab your attention and make you stop, if they're not loud enough to make you pause and look at them, really look at them. This is done mostly with composition. Of course, you can use some graphical content, something really disturbing to grab the attention of the viewer. But this is rarely applicable to the advertisement field. This is more for the photojournalism. So if you want to be a commercial photographer, you need to produce images that can grab attention and make people spend some time looking at them. This is why you need to study and mostly practice composition. I say practice more than study, because I believe that composition is not something that can be studied. As, for example, English is not my mother tongue. At some point as an adult, I had to take classes and develop a skill to learn English. And I think it's the case for all of you. Most of you had to, as adults, learn English as a skill. So it did not come naturally to you. You had to put effort and you had to practice it. I think you all agree that no matter how many books or educational videos you watch, if you don't practice speaking a language, you will not be able to speak it. So today, I will just point your attention to key topics, in my opinion, most important topics, where you have to research and where you have to practice to master the composition. So first of all, this language of a flat image, why is it so important that the image is flat? Because what we see around us is not a flat world. You might think that direct photograph of what's around you looks just like what you see with your eyes, but this is completely not true. This is a mistake. You see and you perceive a three-dimensional world. with both eyes, with your stereoscopic vision, you see objects at different depths from you. You constantly focus your eyes on something that's close and then on something that's far away. You're never seeing a still image. And also everything is moving. So a lot of the times you ignore things that are stationary, that don't move fast. This is a very old instinct, because something that is moving can be dangerous. So people are hardwired to pay more attention to what's moving, because it might be dangerous, or it might be food, or it might be animal they're hunting. But anyway, this is the most important thing you see, is something that's moving, not something that's still. So you have to understand that speaking the language of a two-dimensional, flat, still image is not something you can do naturally. Even though it looks like photographs are something you can understand, or painting for that matter, it's not. It is something unnatural to the human eye. So that's why we have to learn it as a skill. And here are some important tools that you can use to make your composition louder. And also we'll talk about when you want to make it louder and when you want it to speak softer. Let's just begin. So let me start with the fact that this image here, the orange on a white background, it does not really have a composition. If we think of this orange and two slices as one object, it does not have a composition because it has no frame. If you look at it like this, it's one composition. It's in the bottom, it has something on top. If you look at it like this, it has shifted again. So unless you have a border around your image to constrain it, there cannot be a composition. Composition is always a relation between masses on your picture. And the frame is an important part. First of all, if you have just one object and the frame, the composition is the relation between the frame and the object in the frame. So you make, let's say you have just one object. You make it small, you show it as less significant, less important, less prominent, whatever. You can put it in the middle, at the center. It creates a feeling of stability. You can put it to the side. It creates some tension. You can put it in the upper corner so that it has no support. This creates even more tension. But you must know that more and the most amount of tension is not always the best. You have to balance, because if your composition is too much, if it's too aggressive, people cannot follow it. You have to give them something. I'll show you the examples. Here, take this leaf, for example. It's very harsh. You can see all the grid, all the structure, very high contrast. It's in the middle. So what do you feel looking at it? You feel like it's strong. You feel like it's huge. You feel like it's probably stationary and like it's above you. All of that has nothing to do with the leaf. You would not in real life feel that a tiny leaf is huge or that is much bigger than you would not feel that. So why this is working is because you're not looking at the content. You look at this picture, and first thing you see is composition, and the composition is telling you that you're looking at something very strong, very big, and the content comes later. So here, for example, you can take an object which has no such traits, like being strong and big, and you portray this this object as if it has it all. This one, for example, not so much, right? It's not screaming at your face, but why it has all the different splashes and tiny details. It looks interesting, but it's not grabbing your attention. It's not screaming, look at me, I'm here, I'm big, I'm whatever. Because of this image, this is just a black and white rendition of the previous image. When you look at it in black and white, you see that it has very little contrast. The contrast is the difference between the darkest part of the picture and the lightest part of the picture. And here, it's a very little contrast. Things that are contrasty, they speak louder in the language of the composition than things that have less contrast. Look at this, for example. This is very aggressive. We are just, I'm not talking right now about all the other tools which composition provides you with. Just speaking about how loud the picture speaks to you, how loud it is screaming at you. And this one is very loud, very loud. And the reason why is this. It's very contrasted. You can see a lot of white and black parts all mixed up together. This one, we can all agree that this one is subtle. And probably it suits its subject perfectly. If you're taking a picture of a smoothie with berries, you don't want it to scream because you want people to get the sensation of comfort. So you want to be very careful with your contrast. And this is exactly what the photographer is doing here. Look at this. It almost has no black parts, no white parts. Everything is somewhere in the middle, grayish. This one, for example, let's say you're doing an advertisement for clothes or for furniture, for home, and the theme of the product is coziness. You want to show the product as warm, inviting, fuzzy, soft. So you would make a picture like this with little contrast. And what's important here is the difference between those pictures is not in the object itself. This is all done with lighting, with post-production, with how you place your lights, what kind of lights you use. So this has to be your choice. You're just given a product and you decide how you light it and what kind of post-production you do. And you have to make it in alignment with the theme of the product. here, just to prove my words about composition being more important than the subject, can someone tell me what is this? Probably no, I don't think so. This is, to me, it just looks like an abstract, but you cannot deny that there is a composition here. So what I want you to always remember is that composition exists separately from the content. It has its own rules and you can control it separately. It doesn't matter what kind of product you're given, you have to think of composition separately from the theme, from the content, and from the product you're shooting. Another important thing is how you position your objects in the frame. Because when you hear about composition, most people hear about positioning objects in the frame. You think of composing something out of objects and props to make a composition. The reason why I put this second after the contrast is because if you have a contrast, you have different objects. If you have very little contrast, like here, for example, the photographer, or this is probably a 3D renderer, but the designer, he was trying to make it exciting. He was trying to build a composition. That's why he added all those splashes, all those details. He wanted to compose something out of different elements and make a composition. And he was thinking about the positioning of things. It's not by chance that there's a part of the orange slice in the bottom right corner, something on the top left to support it. He wanted to create a balance with his composition, but it's very hard. It's almost impossible to speak the language of composition if you don't have strong words to start with. If your image is lacking contrast, it does not really matter how you arrange different components, because they are all very subtle. So this is why the contrast came first before the position of the objects in the frame. But of course, positioning the objects is important, and it's a big part of what you do when you shoot product photography, when you shoot flat lays. That's what you have to do. And then you position the objects. You have to think about whether you want to create balance or you want to create imbalance. If you create balance, like this image here is balanced, then you look at it, you don't get the feeling that the bottle or the glass is going to tip over. You don't get the feeling that there is too much air above it. You don't get the feeling that the bottom right corner is empty because the photographer placed the orange slices there. Exactly for that reason, because the bottle is higher and maybe more solid, it needed some support. So he put those orange slices down there. So this is a very balanced composition. And a lot of the times, this is necessary for an advertisement shot, because you don't want a picture, the advertisement picture, to disturb people, to make them uneasy, right? You want someone to look at the picture and maybe feel pleased and maybe dream about how he's going to use the product. You don't want the person to feel that that something is not right here, and this is exactly what imbalance in composition creates. If that is your goal, you can do this by creating the imbalance purposely. But to create imbalance purposely, first you need to learn how to create balance. Just another picture from the series. Here's one more. Take a look at this. The composition, the placement of the product here is central. And if you place something along the center line or at the center point of your frame, you make it still. The person looking at this picture is at ease about the bottle. He's not worried that the bottle is going to roll away. So this creates the sensation of calm. But also, you cannot leave everything empty around, right? This would have been too easy. You want something for decoration around it, and they decided to put those paper cutouts around it. And to create even more tension, they've used the opposing colors to the blue and orange. These are colors that are very contrasted to each other, even though wrong way. Even though it seems like the colors have little contrast, right? It's almost the same value. If you look at this picture in black and white, it is going to be gray. The orange is going to be gray, and the blue is going to be the same kind of gray. So it looks like there's not much contrast, but the color makes up for that. You see, if I delete the orange color on the right part becomes much more subtle than the left part. Take a look at this, for example. You have to know that whatever you place in the picture, it has to be intentional. Like if you take out the leaves from the top left corner, you're left out with this empty space. This does not feel right. So if you're trying to create a balanced composition which will complement the product, you have to arrange everything so that it creates balance. But to do so, you have to understand why some objects on the canvas have more weight. The balancing composition is pretty easy. What you have to do is you just imagine this picture being hung on a nail. Just put a nail through the middle of the picture. If it looks to you that the picture will tilt, like here, for example, if I put the nail through the very center of the bottle, I feel like this picture is going to tilt to the right. It means that the composition is not balanced. So this is what you're trying to do. You're trying to balance it. Take a look at this. I think you all agree that this picture is much louder than the previous one, right? You can scroll through all the previous pictures, which were balanced and pretty and colorful, but you might stop at this one because it makes you feel uncomfortable. And you might think that it makes you feel uncomfortable because of the content. You might think that it makes you feel uncomfortable because you are afraid that the big log is going to smash those bird eggs, right? But what if I blur it out? Imagine you have not seen the previous picture, right? So you don't know what's going on in there. You don't know about the eggs. You don't know about the big log. Just look at those blurred masses. You see that this composition is imbalanced. Very little supported from the right. And also this white table, it looks like it's floating in the middle, but the support, the stool under the table is not centered, right? So this can tip over. Let's go even further. I've outlined the objects here so that we would forget all about what's the content of this photograph. Just look at it as if it's an abstract painting, right? Do you get that same feeling that something is wrong here? It's not right. It's not how you should compose objects. I do personally. I feel like this little tiny line on the right is not enough to support this huge mess on top of it, right? So here, this photo, or this even more, more details just in a second about it. Now this photo here, it teaches us that if you combine the composition with the content and with the idea, and they all work together to give the same feeling and the same thoughts, it multiplies and becomes much stronger. Here, the content says that the eggs are in danger, and the composition tells us exactly the same thing. So when you look at this picture, you get twice the information through different channels. You realize what's happening, what are the objects here, but also subconsciously you get that feeling that something is not right. This is why this photo is much more powerful than the previous one, for example. And one more thing here. If you look at this picture, it's mostly right. It's a lot like the real photograph. The composition is quite resembles it a lot, but there's one thing missing here that it is in the original picture. It's the contrast on the eggs. Just watch for the difference on the eggs. See, I've added some tiny sharp lines on the eggs to make more contrast specifically in that area, because you have to understand that contrast can be on a big scale Like here, for example, this photograph is contrasted. The background is very dark, and the wooden log is much brighter. So there is contrast there. But contrast also exists on a micro level. For example, if you take any textured object and you make a close-up picture of it, you get the contrast from the texture. The picture itself might lack the contrast in general. There might be no objects on the picture. It might be just the texture, but the texture itself might have a lot of contrast in it. So when I added this micro contrast to the eggs, I've made the eggs louder on this picture compared to this one. Here, look at this white ball. It is not as loud as this here. Even though it is brighter, you might think that it's going to be louder because it's all white, but it's not. This micro contrast makes this specific point of the image speak louder. But we'll come back to the texture a little later. Here again, just to recap. This has contrast, right? The background is very light. The flowers are dark. This has contrast, but this image is not loud at all because of the positioning of the object. It's in the center. Nothing is in imbalance here. Nothing is going to smash it. It's not going to fall off the edge. It's not going to tip over. You have zero fear that something can go wrong here. So you just ignore it and you just skip it. So if you want to be safe, just to make a really nice picture of something, don't make it too loud, because composition cannot convey meaning, right? So I don't believe that people say this, that this abstract composition make me feel sad about the years long gone. I don't believe this, because I think the language of the composition is much more simple. It's either very loud, screaming and in your face, look at me, look at me, look at me, I'm here, I'm big, or it might as well tell something like, I'm small, I don't know where to go, I'm lost here, you need to help me, something like this. But it's always very primal, something you can understand no matter what's your cultural context, right? Some emotions that people can feel in general. This is what the composition can speak about, not some complex ideas. The complex ideas are for the story. So you place your objects in the photographs in a certain way, in a certain context, and you tell a story about some complex idea. But the composition is about something very simple, like it can show you feeling of being afraid or feeling at being calm and at ease. This is the scope of it. But it does not mean that that it's not important. You just have to understand how to use it, and it's very powerful that way. So going back, if you need a pleasing photo, don't go crazy with the placement. Don't try to do something like this if you're working for a client for the first time, because you never know how exactly this is going to make a person feel. Like they can go really uncomfortable looking at this, especially if they're looking at their own product. Commercial clients are that way. They don't want any negative emotions next to their product most of the time. So here, for example, this is a very common way to arrange objects. This comes from the painting, and it used to be very classical way to arrange objects on a painting. You just make a triangle which is placed on its stable side in the middle. There's nothing can go wrong here, right? Because it's safe, it's stable, and it shows you the main hero of the picture in the middle, so no problem here. You can just, let's take a closer look at this. You can notice that this looks balanced, even though on the right side, the orange is much smaller than that pile of mountains and houses and umbrellas on the left side, right? So why, even though the right side is 2 or even 3 times smaller than the left side, why does it feel balanced, right? Does it feel balanced to you? Can you, if you would please just type 1 if yes and 0 if no, so that I would know that you're all here. And I also would be it would be interesting to see if we have different opinions. Or and just around, spam it, go. No, come on. I forgot to ask you. Oh, whoa. I forgot to ask you if you can hear me. I was just taking it for granted. Okay, hopefully it's going to work out. Right, coming back. Can you please, great, thank you. Please type the tab 1. Don't know that you're here. Okay, while you do this, I will just assume that you agree with me and this looks balanced to you. So 3 times smaller, but it's still balanced. Again, this orange. This it has this white rim around it, and it has all the tiny details which create contrast. The mountain on the other side is less contrast. So this is why something small can balance something bigger on the other side. If you, for example, you have a product which is small, and it has to be small in the frame. You're trying to make a balanced composition. If you put something of the similar size to balance it, you're going to win. No, you laid I'm sorry, my connection is spotty, but I hope it's back. Good. Sorry about this. So I was saying that if you're making a composition and you're laying out the props, supporting props around your product, you cannot allow for those props to grab the attention. The viewer has always have to understand what's the main product here, what's the hero of the shot. So that's why sometimes you need to balance something small with something bigger. So sometimes you need to balance a smaller product with some props which are bigger, but if you make them less contrasty, you can still do this. The small contrasty thing is going to stay the hero of the shot. The big, less contrasty thing can balance it to make for a balanced and pleasing composition. Okay, so this one is obvious, right? You look at it, you see that too much space on top. This creates some tension. Then I look at this photograph, I wonder what has happened here? Why there's so much air on top? And this is perfect to point the attention of the viewer to the title or to some copy, to some text, right? So then you make a photograph for advertisement. Sometimes you need to think about what the designer is going to do with it next. If you give a picture which is completely balanced, like the first one, there might be no space to put something else like text. If you think about the complete design, the end product while you shoot, because here obviously I made it very simple in Photoshop, just clone the background, right, to create this to show you. But sometimes then there's texture. When you're making a picture outside, it's going to be impossible to make more background. So this is also something you have to keep in mind, that the composition is going to exist in the final product. Your decisions about the composition have to be in relation to the very final image that the audience is going to see. It does not matter how something looks while you shoot it. It only matters if your compositional idea is going to survive to the very last step of the production. So here I'm just showing you what would have happened if I am to delete the orange, or if while shooting I did not put it in the first place. You can clearly see that this same image now is imbalanced. It's just tilting to the left. And in this particular case, it does not have any meaning. I'm not trying to make people worry that this bottle is going to tip over. I'm not trying to make them uncomfortable. So why would I make such an imbalanced composition? And here, this is the same image, just cropped differently. You can see that this same imbalance, what was imbalanced in the previous picture, now becomes a balanced composition again, because the frame changed. So this is to stress once again that the composition does not exist without the frame. No matter how many objects there are in the picture, doesn't matter how complex you've arranged them, doesn't matter what you've done, if your picture does not have a clear defined frame, you cannot build a composition. There's no point in starting to build a composition if you don't know your frame yet. This might be useful than working with a client, because a lot of the times it happens a lot. They don't know when they commission you for the shoot. They don't know what's the end product is going to be. They want everything. They want a vertical banner on the website. They want a horizontal banner on the website. They want a 2x3, just a standard picture for their article, stuff like this. So sometimes they want a 2-page spread image. So there's going to be a crease, the magazine crease in the middle, right? So if you don't know how your image is going to look, how it's going to be presented in the final form, there's no point in starting to arrange a composition. And the second tip I want to give you here is, if you're doing something like this, if you're doing product photography, something like this, you have to work with the tripod. You have to put your camera on the tripod, and ideally you want to connect a monitor to your camera, the bigger monitor, because or you might want to shoot tethered to the computer, because on the camera screen it's really hard to see the details, and also it makes impossible to, even though the more important problem, it makes impossible for you to go and arrange the objects while seeing what you're doing, because usually the camera screen is on the back of the camera. So if you want to center or nudge a little to the left some of your objects, you're going to be running back and forth between the camera and your set, trying to fine-tune it. So that's why first you gotta kind of figure out what's your frame is. Are you shooting square or are you shooting verticals for mobile or horizontal, or if you're doing 16 by 9 for a video still, for example. So first you got to figure this out. You got to dial it in your camera, or you can tape the monitor. Just use a masking tape and stick it to your monitor to define your frame. And this has to come first, and then you start to build a composition. Because if you don't do this first, it's going to be ruined. And I understand that sometimes you have to shoot handheld. You don't get a set, you don't get even a camera. Sometimes you have to shoot with your phone, and you hold it like this over the top of the table, because in the studio you would usually make a flat lay picture on the floor because it's easier to set up, or on a small coffee table. But if you're at the restaurant, if you're in the shop somewhere, sometimes you don't have the small table. You have to make arrange everything on a high table, and then you have to take a picture with your phone, and you don't see it until you look at the screen. And this is just something I try to avoid personally. If I know that the shoot is going to be like this, it's just too stressful. You have to be prepared. You have to know your technique, and to really think about the creative side, about the composition, and about your story, and about your lighting and the feel you want to produce. Then to thinking about how you're going to get that high angle from the top. Okay, so just to wrap up the placement of the objects, would you please look at this picture, which is pretty standard. A lot of this type of pictures are being made and sold on stock sites. So what do you think about the composition here? Do you have the the ability, the permission to type into the chat, or it's not available to you? Okay, well, I'll just assume that you can hear me, but you cannot say anything back. So how I would go about this? The simple way to try to figure out what's going on compositionally is to close one eye and to squint really hard with the other until the image starts to blur. This is going to get rid of all the text, all the small details, and it's going to allow you to see how the objects in general, how the masses, the contrast is arranged on a picture. So here, someone was trying to make a really comfortable, really nice image, right? You can tell there are snacks, coffee, flowers, and it looks like she is happy, right? But this laptop screen is just totally killing it, because it's so heavy and it is so high on top that if you look at the composition only, not on the objects, not on the theme, and not on the concept of the picture, if you look at the composition, this one is quite like the eggs under the log, right? Do you see what I'm telling you? It looks like something can fall from the top and someone might get hurt, right? So just to alleviate, look at this. I mean, now the phone is giving us trouble because the phone also has a black screen, but just put a finger over the iPhone and it's perfect. I mean, nothing is grabbing attention. There's no imbalance in this composition apart from the phone. It's all right. It's just it's one more photo which does not speak very loud. It's okay. We can live with it. But that's just too much. You have to think of those things. Sometimes you would make, let's say someone commissioned you to make this. You made this, and the client says, and they will never ever tell you, look, I'm sorry, it looks like the composition is a little off. Could you please just crop it a little from the top and it's going to be fine? No. Remember, I told you in the very beginning, people don't think about composition at all. Like they don't think about talking, right? No one is going to think that the problem with this image is with composition. We're going to start to look for problems, and we're going to tell you, I don't like the color of the pink. I don't like that the watch is totally overexposed. It's blown out. And if you will start to make those edits, if you will start to try to make client comfortable and do what he or she says, you will never solve the biggest problem, and the client is not going to tell you about this problem because they don't know what exactly is making them feel uncomfortable about this picture. It is your job to know this. It is your job to think of it beforehand, before you even give this to your client. So you gotta figure it out. Like this one here, you look at it and it looks fine. It looks fine. There's a marble, two marble blocks under the glass. Those two marble blocks are supposed to support the glass, right? Because the glass is very high. I mean, the drink in the glass, it's very high. It's unstable. So to support it, the photographer put those very heavy marble blocks, right? Thinking that those heavy marble blocks will balance the drink on the top. But the problem is the one side of the block is overexposed. It does not feel heavy, compositionally speaking. It feels light. So now the drink is unsupported. The drink looks like it might fall over. And to make it even worse, there's now too much white space, air in the bottom part. There's no, if you just move it like this, take a look, it's much better. Now the frame itself acts as a support. So the marble blocks did not work, but we can reframe it, and the frame itself, the bottom of the frame, is going to support the glass. But it's not cropped, to say, it's cropped like this. So there's nothing in the bottom. Again, this image, the composition is very quiet. It's not screaming. It does not have a lot of contrast. It's in the middle of the frame. they did not want us to feel uncomfortable. They wanted us to just admire the beauty, but it doesn't work because the composition is imbalanced, and the composition is imbalanced here because of the wrong placement of the objects. I want you to look at I've already told you that in the advertisement picture, the hero of the picture has to be very clear. And I've had this happen to me. I've shot a dish, a sandwich, and a pack of cheese used to prepare the sandwich in the frame. And this was an advertisement for the cheese, obviously. And of course, when you have a sandwich this big and a small pack of cheese, you don't put the pack of cheese in the middle and a tiny bit of sandwich showing up from the side. You want to show the sandwich. And also, I'm a food photographer and I shoot food. It's just happened to be paid by this company producing cheese. So anyway, I was doing the picture. I hope I can show it to you. Yeah, so it's not here. Anyway, just look at this. Imagine that the cake on the background, in the background, is not a cake, but it's the advertised product. So naturally, you want to focus on your main thing here, and the main thing here is the food, right? It's a picture of the food, not a picture of the product in the back. But the client almost never is going to let you to make the product out of focus, because it's just it's what the marketing people do. They will not allow for the text on the label to be out of focus. They will not allow for a shadow to be put at the part of the product and stuff like this. Then they see a picture, they only see their product in this picture. So I was making a similar picture, similar to this one. And what I ended up doing is I had to make two pictures, one focused on the main subject here in the frame, and the other focused back on the product, and then combine them in Photoshop, stitch them. This is called focus stacking. To to do both, to show the product in focus, because what are you gonna do? It's the client, and he pays for the shoot, even though he agrees that the main hero of this image is not the product. He still will not allow for the product to be out of focus. And try to think now, just look at this picture here and try to think what happens when you do what I did there, when you stick the focus and everything is in focus from the foreground to the background. You see here, the out of focus in the back creates separation, right? So the hero product in the foreground is sharp. It's the same cake that lies in the back, but it's much sharper because it's in focus, and you can tell that it's a hero product here in the picture. If you make the background as sharp as the foreground, you completely lose the composition you were trying to make. because now it becomes flat and there's no separation between your hero object and props around it. So here, there's no such problem. And usually there's no such problem with flat lays, because if you shoot from the up down, everything is going to be in focus more or less. It's only a problem when you make a macro photo from the side, you get very shallow depth of field. But here it's not a problem. They don't mind, there's no texture in the background. It's just a picture of a t-shirt. But there is still a problem here, even though it might look like it's obvious that the hero shot, that the hero product here is a t-shirt. There is still a problem, and I'll tell you, if you, like me, see that something is not quite right here, I'll tell you why. This is because of this. So some people think, when they first try to learn about composition, some people think that there are some compositional rules, like this one is very famous, rule of thirds. Some people think that this is a rule of how you should place objects in the frame, and it is not. It's a rule how your viewer's eye is going to work, right? So it does not matter for the viewer how did you arrange your objects in the frame. He's still going to look at your picture like this. Try to place this grid, the rule of third, I'll show you the studio later. I'm actually in the kitchen right now, but never mind. Try to place this rule of third onto this image here. So the photographer is trying to create some kind of composition, but the viewer has no idea about it. He sees this picture, and first he's going to look at it according to some rules. Rule of third, for example. Here, the top third line is here, right? I'm moving the screen. It's next to the hand. So the viewer of this picture is hardwired somewhere in the brain to start looking at it from the hand. And what makes it worse, almost exactly from this tattoo. So the thing, what a lot of people don't understand about rule of thirds and our rules of composition, it's not what helps you to place the objects. It's what tells you how someone is going to look at your picture. So if you know for sure that person is going to start looking at your picture from here, from the top, from this area, you can also use this rule, the rule of thirds, and not put anything in there. You know the person is going to look there, and you intentionally don't put anything in there. It also is your creative choice. You will make a person a little bit more uncomfortable because he was expecting to find there something. Right here, he found the tattoo, and I'm not talking right now about if it's good or bad that the first thing he sees is the tattoo on the wrist and not the t-shirt. No, I'm talking about something else. Don't just follow the rule of thirds and arrange your objects like a robot on those lines. those lines are just telling you where the person is going to look first. You can use this knowledge however you want. You can use it to make a person uncomfortable, but by not giving him anything to see at those specific points, right? So this is just one thing I wanted to tell you about the composition rules, and I just feel that it's important to understand the difference. So here I'm a little bit unhappy with the prominent place of the wrist, even though it's obvious that this picture is not about the hand, it's about the t-shirt. So maybe crop it like this, right? So now the first thing the person is going to see is this white shoulder. So this somehow makes more sense to me, but let's move forward. Okay, here. Not always you have a hero subject. Some pictures don't need the hero subject. It is also your decision if you're showing something as a hero or not showing anything as a hero at all. A lot of the times, clients do not need pictures with hero subjects in them. For example, if it's going to be used as a background, if a lot of text is going to be put over it, no need to make something stand out. You just have to make a very blunt, very quiet, almost silent composition, which does not tell anything, which does not grab attention, which just exists. And you also need to know how to do this. The same way you balance, when you're trying to balance your shot, the same principles you apply to balance it, you can apply to just wash it out, to make the whole frame filled equally in every part. When you make it balanced this way, you get an appealing picture. Maybe you use the brand colors, maybe use the brand symbol, something else, but basically you're making a background for something else. And to make a picture like this, you also need to use the knowledge of the composition, because if you arrange it slightly different, you will shift this balance and some part of the image will get that hero status. It's going to grab attention. And as soon as this happens, you don't have like a washed out background anymore. You start to get a hero picture, and sometimes you don't need that. I'm just reading the questions. Okay, just a quick stop to answer a couple of questions. Do I or someone else, for that matter, have a signature composition? It's when you shoot a lot of products over the years, like just take a look at this. So this is just my work cloud folder. You can see every month I make hundreds and hundreds of pictures. And of course, let me assure you, I do not think about the composition every single time. Sometimes I make several thousand pictures in a day, and not all of them are just cutouts on a white background like this. Some of them are more like you have hands and stuff, right? You have to take into account more objects, right? So if I would every single time to put a camera onto the tripod and think about the composition, it would have been impossible for me to do my job, because I have to do this fast. I have to make several hundreds of those in a day. So yes, of course, over the time you start to think less about the composition, because you know some tricks, your own tricks, and you just use them over and over. This is why it is important to, from time to time, have a really challenging project to work on, because if you're going to just keep reusing what you have once created or discovered or maybe found on the internet, if you're just going to do the same stuff over and over, after years, you're going to feel bad about yourself. So from time to time, you have to challenge yourself and really start from the scratch, start from the white canvas, and try to invent something. But of course, if you're doing something like what I'm doing, I have my go-to compositions. I shoot something at an angle. I always make sure to have a hand or some kind of utensils in the frame, because this is what creates interest and motion. If I'm shooting something straightforward like here, I'm making sure that the horizon line is straight. I don't have to think about those things anymore. This is automatic, but some other projects you have to start from scratch. So yeah, to answer, okay. What's a limbo photo? Just you'll have to explain on that. Ideal aspect ratio to photographing an object. I can only say that making verticals is a little harder for me personally than making landscapes. Maybe because I've started some time ago and this whole vertical craziness was not around, and I was, mostly doing landscapes, and now I have to re-educate myself, reinvent something to make those vertical pictures, which is harder. So, of course, the more narrow your frame is, the harder it is. I'm not saying the square is the easiest, but something really panoramic is hard to arrange. But just you have to try and figure it out. Maybe it's going to be easier for you. Maybe taking vertical pictures is going to be easier for you, right? I don't know. Here's an example of what I was telling you about the hero object in the composition. You can look for as long as you want, and you will not find a hero here. And let me tell you, it is just as hard to achieve as making a balance. I even think that to make a hero in the center of the frame is much easier than to create this subtle balance. If you just take a screenshot and try in Photoshop to delete any of those things, what's going to happen is you will create the negative space in this area, and this negative space, bam, is going to become the hero of the shot. It's going to suck all the attention. So just as an exercise, take a lot of different things, different shapes, different sizes, and try to arrange them. But remember to define the frame first, and try to arrange them in a way that does not create any focal point, any hero of this composition. It's really hard, and I think this kind of exercise helps you understand what composition really is. It helps you to understand how you can combine elements. The one more thing, I told you about the texture, right? Just a second. Here, I told you that the texture creates contrast in itself. Like here, the texture is pretty strong. There is no object, no composition here, but the texture itself creates some micro contrast. Here, it's even stronger, right? Those berries are too small to become objects of the composition in itself because they're just too small and there are too many of them. But they create this texture, and this texture is even louder than the previous one. This one depends on how you feel about it. But what's different about this is those are lines, and lines are much stronger than organic shapes. It helps that those lines are a little bit bent and wobbly, but in general, lines are more loud and more strong than any other kind of shape in the picture. And also, and I mean that by strong, I mean that they have more weight. It might seem strange, but you can balance a circle, you can balance a big circle with a thin line on the other side, just because lines are more powerful. But on top of that, lines also direct the viewer's eyes. So you have to be careful with the lines. And those exercises, when you physically move the objects, they help you to find your ways around it. For example, back to the food flat lays, it's hard to make pictures with chopsticks because they are big. They are almost always bigger than the plate, right? And they are lines, and they suck all the attention just because they are lines. I don't know, just Google it on your own. Just Google any flat lay food photography with some chopsticks in the frame, and you will see that it's a challenge to find an angle, find a way, because the chopsticks do two things. First they grab the attention, and then they use all that attention to point it wherever they are pointed themselves. So it's hard to balance them. And one of the things you see a lot of photographers do oh yeah, I know, it's the time is short, I know. It's just final tips. So a lot of times you'll see that photographers will hide a part of the chopsticks under the plate. And this way, or they will purposely put a shadow in the middle of the chopstick, or I don't know, put a piece of a corner of the towel, or try to break this line in some way, break it in the middle to make it two smaller lines, because two smaller lines are easier to manage than this one big line. So be careful with the lines, be careful with the texture, because whatever has texture becomes more heavy because texture gives contrast, and as you remember from the beginning, contrast is what defines weight. So even if you have a small object, if it's textured, you're going to need something big to balance it. Oh yeah, one more thing, which is somewhat similar to texture, but it's really not. See, texture is chaotic. It's not regular. But if you get the regular texture, you get rhythm. And rhythm is, you might think that this image is loud because it's very contrasty, and of course it is contrasty, but just try to imagine what would have been if those lines were not all parallel. If they were just, it would have been less loud, because when you see rhythm, it amplifies whatever is going on. Like this. This image is so strong, not only because of the texture, not only because of the high contrast, it is so strong because of the repeating rhythm. And rhythm is also a part of the tool set you have to work with the composition. Let's just recap real fast from the beginning. So to start, you need a frame. If you don't have a frame, don't start to make a composition. To proceed making a composition, you will need some kind of contrast, or you will deliberately make a composition with less contrast to make a subtle image. But you know that some people will just scroll over it. Just use it carefully, because your picture may be dismissed, but at the same time, it can be very comfortable and pleasing picture to look at. After you have your frame and you have some mass, some contrast to play around, you start building the composition inside the frame. So if you put something in the center, you're making it balanced and stable. If you want direct, if you want some parts of the image to be looked upon at the first, in the first order, you place them onto the grid of rule of thirds. So just take into consideration all the geometry of your objects. Everything we've talked here about, plus the colors. So the contrast can be created not only by black and white. Some colors really have tension between them, like red and green. They are fighting. They have so much contrast. You don't want to look at it because it's so disturbing. So, right. So be careful. You have to have your hero clear from the composition. You don't want people wondering what's the hero here. You don't want people walking around with their gaze trying to figure out what's the main point here, unless you're specifically making a composition with no hero. Then just go and make that. You can use rhythm and texture. Those things will amplify whatever contrast and composition you already have. And also, if you're walking around and you need to shoot at some restaurant, for example, or at the store, and you see that the table has is checkered, black and white, just maybe find some kind of background. Just be aware that it's going to be hard, because it's going to scream from the moment you just put a frame on it. It's already going to be screaming, and you'll have a hard time to managing it. So just be aware of the texture and the rhythm. And
Ya, teman-teman. Wingi ta.
I think this is all I wanted to tell you about the composition on the flat image. All the other stuff you might be hearing about the perspective, the converging lines, the separation of the hero from the background, from the front. You know, it's all really comes down to this, because if you think of an image as a two-dimensional flat canvas with just objects of different masses, you just forget about the perspective, about everything else, because at the end, all those considerations come down back to the contrast and the positioning of those objects. So if you nail those things, I bet your three-dimensional portrait, environmental portraits are going to get great as well, because it's the same principle. You're making a flat image in the end. So I think this is all I could think of telling you about the composition, and we have 6 minutes left, and I'm going to run really quick through your questions right now. Okay, first of all, 2 things. If the time runs out and you all have to go, just 2 things I need to tell you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for organizing this. And what you need to know is your teachers who are with you every step of the way are going to give you 90% of what you're going to learn. All these meetings, however exciting they might look, they might, I don't know, inspire you, they might show you some different angles, but at the end, most of the stuff you will learn is going to be because of the people who are with you daily, doing exercises and talking to you about your work. So I just want you to think about that, and just just be grateful. And it's really hard. It's easy for me to spend a couple of hours here, but it's hard to take you by your hand and walk you from the total beginners to somewhere. It depends, but it's hard work. So just appreciate it, please. And the second thing is, a lot of the questions, a lot of your answers, particularly to my first question about what would you shoot. Did you notice that almost none of you talked about composition? And it's I understand why it is. When someone asks you, what are you going to take picture of, or what's on this picture, you don't necessarily think about composition, right? You think about the object. If you're really thinking about what's happening there, you might think about the story, who the photographer is, how did he get access to make this picture, what, I don't know, social problems might be behind it, and that stuff. So you might be thinking about the story, but it's really hard to think about the composition of the picture. That's why you need to intentionally direct your attention to this in your own work. So I've read all your ideas about what you would like to shoot if you had unlimited resources, and a lot of you guys say that you would have rented out your equipment, which is, I mean, I get it, but the point of the question is, if you had a chance to use it for your creativity, not to earn money by renting it out to other people, but the other half of this, the truth is, as a photographer, you have to be on the market, and you have to do the business as well as the creative stuff. So those of you who were thinking about what they want to shoot, and also were thinking about what all this equipment would do in the free time, I mean, it's good that you're business savvy, because you're going to need it if you want to be in this business. One question I liked particularly, I mean, it's practical, and I see how it might be hard for someone, is how to take a portrait outside in the midday and no shade or no nothing around you. So obvious thing is you would probably use some screen and put the screen between the sun and the subject. But let's say you somehow went out to shoot a portrait and you don't have anything, and it's midday and there's no shadow. So what I would do personally is try to position yourself, try to position the subject between yourself and the sun, right? So maybe lay down on the floor, use a really wide angle lens, and try to hide the sun behind the model, behind her head or shoulder or something. And then ideally use a really powerful flash to light it up from the front again. And you get a great image from the desert, which it might be a setup for a fashion shoot, because it's edgy, it's very harsh lighting, and at the same time it's balanced because you have the generator which can overpower the sun. So you've lit the model from the front, and everything else is obviously lit by sun. So here, almost every time, and make no mistake, this situation is like bad. You don't want to find yourself shooting portraits in a place with no shade in the midday, because it's hard. But even in the worst situations, if you apply your basic knowledge of how to operate your camera and lighting, you can sometimes figure out a way. Cool. It's I think it's time.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, it's a bit noisy in here, but thank you so much, Kamil, for answering the questions from the students. I was basically telling everyone to turn on the camera, because if you have finished with your session, we could do some photo together on Zoom with the students.
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah. Do you have any closing statement you want to kind of give to the students, or that was enough? The last thing you said.
I kind of did open this speech with a closing statement, and I'm sorry for that. But I don't know. I'm just grateful I'm grateful to you for being here, for having this opportunity to share what I've learned. And I know that a lot of questions, I did not answer a lot of your questions, but trust me, if you continue with your studies, if you learn to use your cameras and other equipment, and this is like the first step you need to take, you need to be technically literate. You need to know how to operate your cameras. So the half of the questions you asked me, you are going to answer them yourself as soon as you figure out the buttons on your cameras. And what's for those more complicated questions, you can write me on Facebook, and it's probably here in the chat. Just go there. You can write me, and I might not answer right away. But if you feel like you have a problem with product photography, which is really you don't know where to look for answers, you can write me, and I will try to point you in the right direction, or I will just straight away tell you the answer if I know it. Right. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're also so grateful that you are able to spare some of your time with us, and the students are very excited. Maybe some of them are shy to talk to you directly, but I can see that they're trying their best to kind of interact with you as well. So on behalf of the university and communication study, we really thank you so much, and we hope that when the COVID situation have disappear, we could invite you in person as well, coming to Indonesia, and then meet the students, meet Miss Ade, and all the lecturers and the students here in Surabaya.
I'm looking forward, of course.
Maybe hopefully we could invite you when it's like super cold in Russia, around December and winter, and then you can come here and
not only it's super cold a lot of time in Russia. It's already pretty cold right now.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. So I was telling the students that we're going to have a picture together, so everyone is having their camera, their video on. So Mystica, can you help to take a picture, and I will give the aba-aba ya, Mystica. Okay, semuanya. Okay, everyone. Let's say I don't know. Let's say something in Russia. It means thank you. So let's all say spasiba, and then we have like the smile from the last word of it to Mr. Kamil Guliev. Okay, so let's all say spasiba, and then Mystica will take the picture. Everyone who can unmute, you can unmute, and then I will count 1, 2, 3, and then we all say spasiba. Okay? Clear ya semuanya ya?
Iya,
okay.
Ibu.
Okay. Okay, so you can unmute, and I will count 1, 2, 3. Spasiba.
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 Okay, so that's actually the only word I remember in my Russian dictionary. Okay, Mbak Ade.
Can we
yeah.
make 3 times again, because we have a lot of on camera students.
Okay. We have Kamil. So sorry, we need to smile a bit longer because we have so many students here. Okay, everyone can just smile.
You don't need to explain to me. I know how this works.
Okay, everyone can smile a bit longer now. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. That's good.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I think we finished quite on time, and thank you so much again for Mr. Kamil Guliev for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you all.
Thank you for terima kasih untuk teman-teman yang sudah hadir juga hari ini. Kita Bu Ade, kita bisa akhiri kelas. Bisa ya, Bu Tika, Bapak Latif. Oke, teman-teman, kita akhiri kelas ini. Terima kasih banyak. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Kamil. We're ending the class, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Right.
Thank you.